Welcome to our video cast, Beyond Dashboards, Turning Automotive Data into Scalable Intelligence. I'm here, Cory Allen, with Ryan Dolley. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. I'm Ryan Dolley, VP of Product Strategy at GoodData, and I've been in the data industry for 16 years now, and have been working with Corey for coming up on two.
All good years. My name is Cory Allen. I am the Global Delivery Leader for Actionable Insights Business Unit here at MSX. I've been with MSX for just over 7 years. I've been in the automotive analytics business for over 15 years. So today we wanted to get into, everything about analytics, everything about data, touch on, what's going on in the OEMs. We know that data is abundant, right? We know that you want to make better business decisions. We want to understand how the mobility players are changing the game in automotive. What does a static dashboard look like? How do we move towards scalability and embedded analytics? In today's discussion, we want to talk about actionable data, modern architecture, and real use cases from the field. So first block that I want to walk into is why traditional BI is no longer enough. And my first question for you, Ryan, is what is fundamentally broken in the traditional reporting tools and legacy BI stacks?
Yeah, it's a great question, Corey. I think the biggest problem we have, to state it simply, is that traditional reporting tools almost always have this separate world called reporting that they expect your end users to go into, right? So you think about the burden you're placing on an end user or a customer or someone at an OEM. They're in flight, they're trying to solve a problem, and then they have to completely switch context. They have to leave whatever applications or screens they're in to go into the special reporting part of what you provide for them, analyze data, and then go back and take action on it. And what we find as time goes on is that that's just super inefficient, and people don't wanna do it anymore, right? They're used to, apps on their phone or whatever where, the data and the action is all encompassed in a single experience, and so that's the biggest problem we find across industries, across verticals, everything. It's really just, it's that kind of mental disconnect between, "Hey, I'm working, and now I'm analyzing data, and now I have to go back to working." It's too inefficient.
Yeah, that
My question for you, Corey, is like, well, how does this play out within OEMs? Like the way I traditionally see this is dashboard fatigue. Is that what you're seeing in the OEMs you work with?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it is very true in the automotive world across the globe. Some things that create dashboard fatigue for our customers is there's data overload without context. So you're getting too many dashboards, too many metrics, and you're not understanding what you're looking at. We go back to static dashboards. So static thinking, we're not looking ahead, we're not making decisions, and we're evolving as a society. So we're trying to grow with the metrics that we're seeing. And then we're also not looking at it from you're getting siloed data, so fragmented insights. So you try to create solutions that have this holistic data set, so you can start to make better decision making and predictions of what you want to do within your business. And then with all that, because data is siloed, you get this lack of intelligence or recommendations. And with the tools and the AI that's coming now in the pipeline, that's what everyone wants to see. So we want to have a one size fits all design that kind of encompasses multiple different enterprise solutions and also provides metrics and data to the points that the customers want to see. So great question. The next piece I kind of want to get into is the power of embedded scalable analytics. So my first question, and of course you're on here from GoodData. So
Yeah.
can you tell us, that everyone listening, what's different about GoodData's platform?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference, and it really comes back to that first point I made, is that we built good data from the ground up to give you that kind of integrated analytics plus operations workflow. So, the architecture is really modular. You can think of it as almost a Lego kit where we give you the instructions, we give you the bricks, you can build what the instructions say, and then like when I was a kid, I would do that, and then I'd get sick of that, and I'd take it apart and I'd build something else, right? And that's what you can do with good data. That's the easiest way to understand it. But what that practically means is that when you're working with us, and our architecture, we support all the different end user and customer endpoints you may have. So if you want to send them into a dashboard like a traditional BI tool, great. But if you want to take our visualizations and insights and recommendations and even like specific capabilities like the ability to drag and drop and build queries or schedule alerts or something like that, and you want just that component in your app, you can take just that component out of good data and put it in your app. And then you can also build full blown custom applications where you don't use any of our front end components, none of our visual style, none of, but you use our query engine, you use our data models, you use our metrics creator to kind of build the, build the engine, right? Build the motor, right? But then you put your own chassis on top of it, essentially. And that's what makes us different than tools you're probably, if you're listening to this, familiar with, like Power BI or Tableau or something like that. Um, One of the things that we see a lot in our customer base, like it's very powerful what we have, but you have to change your mindset. And you can't just be thinking in terms of, okay, I build dashboards anymore. You have to start to think like a product manager. And I know that your team really has embraced that. So could you talk us through like how do you guys do that at MSX? Because I know you do it really well, and I think people need to hear this.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great intro, and historically, that's not something we've been known to do. We have this massive operational footprint. We have boots on the ground globally, and really, that's the first part of it. Like you said, it's going from a tool to a product mindset. So instead of focusing on one project ad hoc by ad hoc, it's creating solutions. So we're trying to move beyond just treating analytics as a reporting tool, and we're embedding those analytics directly into workflows for our users, whether they're corporate, field, coaches, dealers, field reps, anyone can get access to this tool. So within the tool, we're also looking at designing it for outcomes, not just insights, right? So we build it for the specific outcomes that the users want to come into, and then they're going to get that actionability instead of just visibility into the solution. And you mentioned this with good data, but we want to be modular. We want to be scalable within our architecture, right? So we use tools like good data. We use tools like Databricks. I mean, there's a multitude of different levels and layers that we have within our solutions, so that we can be multi-tenant, so that we can be modular, and so that we can answer the bell for a big customer, maybe in North America, versus a smaller customer in a smaller country that might have less, and we can scale that up or down. Um, you mentioned this as well. I mean, analytics, it's a living product. That's how we treat it. So we look at it as a software product. It has a roadmap. We get user feedback. We do loops. It's a continuous iteration, but you treat it as a solution instead of just this static thing that's sitting up on the board and you want to change it once in a while. And I think the last thing that's important is trying to empower non-technical users. So all these different tools that are coming out, we want to democratize data. We want to make these interfaces and experiences powerful for these users to make their decisions. So you have things like AI BI chatbots. You have different tools to provide recommendations. So right in the text, they don't have to look for anything. Trying to make these solutions more holistic so that everybody can use it, whether they're technical or non-technical. So
Yeah.
that was kind of our methodology of what we've been thinking about here at MSX.
Yeah, I mean, that last point is so key, and we see it across industries. But I think especially in industries like automotive, where where your users have such deep, many times, because I've worked in automotive before. You have people who have just so much industry experience, and going to them and say, okay, now you got to click around in this data tool and do all this stuff when like they already have an intuition of what the issue is a lot more challenging than being able to provide them like a packaged insight, right? With the visuals, the text, and all of that. Now that we have AI, and I know your team's working on this, the ability to really not just say, "Hey, here's the chart," but here's what we think the chart means, and do you agree? Is such a huge thing. I know there's a number of use cases you guys are working on within automotive that are going to be pretty exciting to people listening to this. So can you walk us through a few of those? Like what are the key areas where you see this kind of product analytics approach really helping your customers the most?
Yeah, so we have very big, VPO operations through the warranty optimization side of the business, and big things from analytics and some of the insights that we want to drive with that is reducing those buybacks and boosting the first time fix rates. So that's a key point on the warranty side of things. Improving that leads into customer satisfaction, right? So if you improve the first time fix rates, you then get to then look at CX and customer experience dashboards and how the user comes back to potentially go into service again and buy another vehicle. So we want to create the warranty solutions so that they can see and have the visibility into those. But then that leads into CX and having the CX reporting that allows the advisors or the technicians or the field rep to have those real time actual guidance, not only having to wait for a coach to go into the store, but actually have that at their fingertips. And the last piece is like I said, the dealer insights. So having the dealer be able to access, the same metrics that the OEM's looking for. Everyone's working to the same beat of their own drum. Everyone can see where the market gaps happen, and then we have that lead leakage. So, it's the lead indicator solutions that we're launching where users can then see what's happening before month end and move into, proactive versus reactive.
How do you
What's it for you from a good data perspective and, your experience in OEM, what would be the smartest way to maintain governance without slowing down the local innovation or flexibility within the solution?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing I think you have to embrace is you kind of hit on it with the product mindset and the modularity, right? So if you choose the right tools and at good, at MSX you have the what it gives you the ability to maintain this data quality while also customizing for different outputs, right? So let's imagine you're working with an OEM here in the United States and you're working with a second one in Germany, and let's say you are working with one in China. Um, you can maintain a central data model that has all the same elements, but then you're able to kind of you create what we call a child model in GoodData. But what that does is it says, "Hey, give me everything from the central model, but allow me to customize it for my particular, for this particular set of applications." And so, and then you keep it in sync. So when you change that parent model and you have, in our example, the three child models, all three of them will update. It just makes it really easy to kind of create a set of central governed data that you think are going to apply to any OEM. And you guys at MSX know, right? A lot of the OEMs, like 80% of the data is probably fairly consistent between them. But then each one has the 20% that is their own special flavor with the way they like to see it and the way they like to talk about it. And so, embracing this idea of modularity and when you were talking about kind of treating your analytics more like software and less like reporting, all of that comes into play. Because in the software industry, actually, these are solved problems, right? They're not in data. In data, there's still big, hard problems that we're trying to solve. But in software, they solved a lot of this stuff. How do I maintain a consistent model, but then have customization for different use for different endpoints? Like that was solved 10 years ago. And so by embracing those principles, like your team that's product, kind of software mindset and modularity, like that's how you do this technically. And you cut way down on what I know is a problem it's a problem everywhere, but it's a problem at OEMs and at people who work with OEMs, which is, everybody's got their own flavor, everybody's got their own spreadsheet, and it just becomes too much to keep track of, right? That's the main problem you're trying to solve. That's my perspective on it, and my perspective on how your team's handling it. Is there anything I missed?
No, I mean, I think you covered most of it, right? The first part for us, like, how do we do it from scaling it from OEM from dealers to regions to country at the OEM level. First thing is the modular architecture, like you mentioned. I think that leads into a couple of the other things, which is governed flexibility. So data laws and data privacy is such a huge thing today. So where does that data live? So how do we make sure that our customer's data is local to our customer, abides by those laws and those security pieces that we need, the compliance pieces that we need to do. So that's number one. And then number two is we start to standardize metrics. This is kind of where we're coming into play of standardizing metrics on the semantic layer. The metrics are going to be the same. We can then use intelligence across OEMs so that we can provide the learnings that we have across the industry to provide, metric one is metric one and metric two is metric two. And you're not talking apples to oranges. It's always apples to apples. Another big piece is a multi-tenant design, from our solution, which is allowing it's role-based, right? So allowing users to come in at the levels that they need to be. So a dealer will only see dealer access. A region only sees a region access, and a country owner only sees their country, right? So that's super important. Going back to security and compliance, you got to have that piece. And then if I go back to my first statement, it's the feedback loops, right? We get real world examples from our coaches using the platform, from our corporate customers using the platform, and our dealers using the platform. So what is that feedback? How do we improve it? And we get those real world examples to make sure that one, data is correct. So, hey, Mr. Coach, or hey, Mr. Dealer, can you define this metric and prove that that's correct instead of just building it in a vacuum and assuming that it's okay? And then also getting the feedback to say, hey, this is too many clicks, or this report isn't useful. So you look at the usage type reports to understand what's valuable and what's not valuable. So
Yeah, that last piece especially, like, it gets to the product cycle flow you're talking about. Like, you have to know what's valuable and what isn't, and so often, teams that are trying to deliver analytics as part of the value they bring to their customers, you use the term like project mindset earlier, and that's really it. They say, "Okay, we're gonna create these 5 dashboards as part of this contract. We'll deliver the 5 dashboards, and then we're done," right? And as someone who's worked in the data industry for as long as I have, I know that, that initial dashboard, no matter how good of a job you do trying to capture all their needs, like, it's, when that dashboard hits contact with reality, they're gonna be really happy for, like, 2 days, and then you're gonna start getting the emails, right? "Hey, this is really great. I also need to know this. Could I also know that?" Right? And the ability to quickly learn from that, and continue to deliver value beyond that, "Hey, we hit the launch button, now we're walking away," is just, like, the such a huge part of what your team is able to do. Um,
yeah,
so
I
what's
would
next? Oh, go ahead.
started to cut you up, but I would just it's allowing users to be proactive. Like if you have a wide enough tool that allows them to find insights, and they don't have to have a dedicated person or a contact point, and they can find it themselves. That's the future that we want to go to. That's the value that we want to have.
Yeah. You mentioned the future. So what's next? What, as far as the trends that are gonna be shaping analytics in automotive, where do you see things headed?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things going on, right? We have kind of wide breadth of automotive is changing into mobility. There's a lot of new players in the market. You have EVs in the market, so a lot of different things from a data and analytics perspective and insights that people want to see. So I mentioned the first one is, what is the EV and hybrid market intelligence? How many chargers are going to be out there? What's the adoption rate? When can I sell EVs in certain areas? You know, that leads into the next one, which is really an impact from like the tariffs that have happened, around the globe, which is, what's the residual value of used vehicles? What's the sell value of the vehicles? What's the part benchmark? How much am I losing on each part price that's going around? So what are the economic pressures that are fueling demand for these vehicles and parts that are out there? That's another big one from a this year perspective. Things that from a future state that matter is, the AI driven intelligence. We've talked about it. We want to use predictive maintenance and modeling, going forward. We want to have AI, the co-pilots of the world, the chatbots of the world, for them to access it and have their own self-service tool essentially. The other ones is, a big one is the scalable multi-tenant analytics. I think that's a trend in the analytics today. And I think that just will carry over as we talk to different OEMs in the space as well. Software defined vehicles, right? Telematics data, that's a huge one, right? So, you know, vehicles are now data platforms, right? So analytics extends beyond operations, and now it's in vehicle systems. Can you schedule an appointment from a vehicle? Do I get real-time diagnostics? What are the over-the-air updates I can push? All of that then leads into data monetization. So the OEMs will want to explore new revenue streams. Can they package the vehicle through usage data? Can the fleet managers leverage that data to improve their fleet? So all those type of things I think are really driving forward in the automotive industry. So from your perspective, and feel free to chime in on anything you thought from automotive, but from a solution standpoint, predictive AI, low code platforms, what are you seeing in that side of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's where everything's is headed. So the way I see things really evolving is almost, there's a few interesting trends going on. So the continued adoption of low code platforms, which for anybody who's not familiar with that term, it really just means the ability to access data through some sort of drag and drop interface, typically, right? Instead of having to learn how to write a programming language to access your data. I mean, those are proliferating. They're getting easier to use, and more importantly, they're not locked away in BI tools anymore. Like, you can take a low code capability and embed it directly in your products that you offer to your customers at MSX. And so that's, I mean, that's one of the main things that we see changing in that area. But really, the way I see things evolving, and it's hard to say exactly, because there's this huge question mark of what is AI really going to be able to do, and how fast is it going to advance? And I don't trust anybody who claims they know the answer to those questions right now, to be honest with you. But with that said, I really see this combination of capabilities coming into play, wherein it makes it easier to find and interact with data. It makes it easier to understand what the data means, and then it makes it easier to take action once you use that understanding to come to a decision. So, what does that look like? I imagine a future where, you have some sort of chat or language based, almost data concierge service, where you ask a question, it knows all the data points that are available to you, and it can go find reports or dashboards that might answer your question, or it can generate new content to answer your question. And then really importantly, on the back end, that we're keeping track of all that. So if Ryan comes in and asks a question, and Cory comes in and asks a very similar question, we don't want to be generating new insights constantly if there's already an insight that answers that question. Because the downside to AI is it does have a tendency to make stuff up, right? So every time, if you can just point it to something that you know is right and have it pull that off the shelf, rather than allowing it to just re-answer the same question every time, you improve your data quality dramatically. What I think this ultimately means is it'll just be much easier for people, everybody, to get insights out of data, and you're not going to have to, the skills you'll need to do that are going to go way down. And what that means is that way more people will be making decisions where data is a factor in that decision than what we've traditionally seen. And the reality is, it's traditionally been pretty bad. If you look at surveys, it's like, 30, the best survey will say 30% of decisions are made using data. And we haven't been able to solve that as an industry. And I think this technology will take us to a much higher number.
Yeah, I think as we kind of go into the next piece, which is like, what do people need to do, right? What do they need to look at from a skills and tools perspective? We talked heavily on the tools, right? So, the modular analytics, that ties into the visualization and BI tools. We've talked about the AI co-pilots and decision intelligence, the data integration low code tools that you mentioned. I think another important one is the cloud data warehouses. So the
Yeah.
Snowflakes, the Databricks, those type of things that can be scalable. The last one I don't think we spent too much time on is the digital twin, the simulation type platforms. That's another one that's out there for predictive modeling. It's not as prevalent, but it's one of those things that is something that can be considered in the future. All these things, I think there's a couple key skills that from an automotive or just in general, users should be aware of and what they should be learning on is number one, as a company, data literacy is huge. I know that that's a point that gets drilled into everybody. But you got to understand data to a certain extent. You have to understand how data flows. As we start to get more evolved with data and prompts from AI engines, uh, that leads into machine learning and AI proficiency. So really prompting effectively.
Yeah.
Your work with your tool. How do you ask it the right question? And then the rest of it's really around for me change management. So as we're changing, from traditional BI to AI, what's the driving that adoption with analytics and the AI tools? So you got to have your change management in place. You got to have cross-functional collaboration between the business, the financial and the executive teams, and the data teams that are available for you. And then the final piece is super key, and I'll hit on again, cybersecurity, right? As data grows and we start to leverage AI, you got to make sure the data is secured, right? So from being a responsible data steward for my customers, the first priority for us is data privacy, and then we can allow them to get those actual insights that they need to see.
Yeah. I mean, I would echo all of that. That's all huge. I think, if you're listening to this, and you're in a position where either you're trying to spin up a team like this, or maybe you're hearing this and you say, "Hey, I want to be on a team like that." One thing I would say that is changing quickly is the skills you need to either acquire or hire for data people. And that is that, for a long time, just being an expert in a BI tool, just pick one, and that's what I do. You know, that could be your career. I started my career on a tool called Cognos, and for the first 8 years, I was the Cognos guy. That's what I did. But that's changing, and I think more than learning any language or learning any particular tooling, that's all going to be important. But what you're really looking for is the type of mind and person that can work with these AI systems and that can work it's a different way of working. It's not going to be quite so project based. It's going to be a lot more fluid, and you're going to have to learn how to really figure out what end users need. And that will become more and more important as AI takes over more and more of the actual plumbing parts of building these data systems. So I would say, like I said, on either side of the equation, hiring or looking to get hired into this type of environment, I would really be prioritizing things like product mindset, like, the ability to iterate quickly. Some people find it very frustrating to iterate quickly. They want very defined rules, and then they want to deliver to the defined rule, right? And that's a mindset that's not going to work as well in the environment that I think we're moving into. And so, it's soft skills. I think are going to be a bigger and bigger part of data going forward because the reality is these machines are going to be doing a lot of the the technical work that we used to be doing. They'll still be supervised. You still have to know how to do that stuff, but more of your day will be dedicated to figuring out what to build and less to figuring out how to build. And so that's just a piece of advice I would have to anybody who's looking to make this transition.
Yeah, those are some great points, and I would agree with you on all those. To wrap it up, it's been a great discussion, so I appreciate you having you on and talking about all these things. But I think we can end with a question that we can both answer. I'll let you start. But what are the three principles you would never compromise on?
Yeah, I think number one is modularity, right? I think you have to be building in a modular way going forward. You can almost think of your analytics as not as like you're building a restaurant menu, and then a person or an AI can come in and order off the menu to get the things they need to assemble the right product. The second one would be security. Like you really, it's so critically important. I think it's even more important as we have more and more autonomous systems. There are going to be stories in the news of them doing weird and bad stuff, and you don't want those stories to be about you. And then the third one I would say is really the product mindset. You need to move from a project mindset to a product mindset. And if you don't know what that means, there's tons of books and blogs and stuff you can look up to really figure out what that is. But those I think are the three main things I would not compromise on if I were building out a program right now.
Those are good. And there might be some overlap with mine. So my three principles, and I think what I want to say is they're both from a data perspective and a platform perspective, but they're also applied to how I manage my team, how do I manage my people. So the first one is trust through transparency. So I want my data to be completely trusted and explainable and traceable. And I want my team to feel trusted as, through their management, through their team. We all should be trusted as what products that we're building and feel safe. The second one is actionability over aesthetics. So same with my people. I want them to be actionable. I want them to be curious. I want my dashboards. I want my reports, all my insights that drive decisions. Now, of course, I want the aesthetics, but it's the age old question of good and on time or perfect and late. I'd rather have something that is driving a decision first, and then we can make it more aesthetically pleasing second. Then the third one is scalability with flexibility. So to your modular platform approach, every solution that we need to build needs to be scalable, needs to be flexible. And you mentioned this with the skills of the team, they need to be flexible. As things are changing and ever evolving, I need to have my teammates and working with me to pivot to the next solution or pivot to the next iteration and sprint that we're on. So those are the three things that I look for from a data platform and a people team perspective as well.
Yeah, that's great.
So with that, Ryan, any closing thoughts from your end? Again, I really appreciate you coming on today.
No, no, thanks for having me on. I mean, the last thing I would say is, it's been a real pleasure to work with you and the team. And I think you guys are doing really innovative stuff in the automotive space, and the vision is so strong with your team at MSX. So, thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for being a great partner of ours. It's been a really great journey.
Likewise, look forward to what comes next. Thank you.